This is Marek Fuchs here today to talk to you about what happened with healthcare stocks in the financial markets at large last week, and more importantly, puzzle out what might be happening in the coming week. Now, last week the market essentially ran to stay in place as the headiness over QE3, or the Fed's now habit of using newly minted money to buy up securities, well, that faded as it had in the past with QE2 and QE1 and QE negative 1, and also trading volume last week was tamped down because of the Rosh Hashanah holidays, and look for a little bit of the same this week as Yom Kippur falls out in the middle of the week on Wednesday. Now also, Apple's iPhone 5 hit shelves, so we have a little bit of a better idea what's going on with that, which is to say we still have no idea, especially if you listen to the media, which as always is gravitating to absolutes. We have MarketWatch on the one hand saw the launch, saw the products hitting the shelves and said, Apple stock sky is the limit. The New York Times, conversely, had a complete takedown of Apple. They had a very provocative article titled, "Has Apple Peaked?" And their contention is essentially, effectively, it has. And emblematic of this is the fact that the Maps program on the iPhone 5 is terrible. It's a disaster. And this to them is indicative of the fact that Tim Cook cannot keep things going, as obviously Steve Jobs once did in such an inventive way. Now, I think Tim Cook still has a lot to prove and won't be able to prove it for the next, couple of years as you see this, need for a new product to come out. But here's the deal, and this is really important to note. Well, even when Jobs was around, the iPhone would have an issue that was pretty readily rectified. They had antenna gate, and obviously, but each time there was a solution at hand, whether it was a free bumper or a free software upgrade. So you need to kind of reserve judgment, much less condemnation here, until we really see if Apple can deal with this Maps program with some sort of quick and free upgrade and skirt any trouble. We did have definitively bad news from Bank of America and the ever more troubled American Airlines, who both announced firings, and of course FedEx, which is the cyclical of all cyclicals and a real harbinger of the global economy, and they cut numbers. In the healthcare sphere, we learned that J&J was the king of all buybackers in the second quarter. They bought back the most stock, and Gilead had a really strong week, which was the product of a big Wall Street recommendation and also a good showing at the UBS conference. Now, they're a great company, don't get me wrong, but this quick hit boost that they got might be something to be a little bit wary of. When a company is up because of a huge drug approval or because of great earnings, that's one thing, that's substantial. But if it's because of a recommendation or a good showing at a conference, well, that attracts the sort of fast money that's impressed with things like QE2, and it has that tendency to fade out. So be a little bit careful there. Also, on those conferences, remember, if you're a working professional in the medical field and can't get to them or aren't a client of UBS and won't be invited, it's really, really important to tune in on the company's websites and listen to the webcast, because you can really learn things and pick up detail that you won't either through the media or through Wall Street reports. Now, in the coming week, we're going to see in just what fractured state our economy is or isn't, because there are a lot of economic numbers coming out, starting with Tuesday's Consumer Conference Board numbers. Now, the last numbers we got, they were the worst since November, so there's a lot at stake here. Then Wednesday we have August new home sale numbers. Now, those last numbers, the August numbers, they weren't bad. They sort of met expectations. Don't put too much thought or concern in any one number here with housing, because housing's been pointing in all these different directions, right? We have these new home sale numbers, but remember, we also have existing home sales and pending home sales and housing starts. You have all these different numbers, some of which have been contradictory in kind of a maddening way. And then we also have the final reading of GDP. Now, be clear, that's the final reading. That's the one you should pay attention to. A lot of times, with the first two readings, especially the first reading, the media gets really, really excitable and draws all these conclusions, not mentioning to you that there are these two revisions. Sometimes the revisions are of upwards of 50%. So you don't really want to draw conclusions till you get that final number. And we'll get that final number this week. Also, we'll get earnings reports from Nike in the consumer sector, Lennar, which will add to your understanding on housing, and RIM, just if you want to tune in for a company that's imploding, RIM's report will be the one for you. We're going to take a look every week here on a couple of drugs that are up for approval before year's end. And NPS's Pharmaceutical has Gattex for short bowel syndrome, and we're going to also mention Calgene's Abraxane for lung cancer. Outside of that, if you disagree with me on any of this, and you obviously won't, but if you do, feel free to tweet me. My Twitter handle is down below the video. It's also at MarekFuchs, and also feel free to tweet me any questions. The main thing, though, is to go out there and have a happy, healthy, and profitable week.